From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. I'm Tyne Morgan, and here's what we're working on for you over the next 60 minutes. USDA gives its first glimpse into 2017 crop year projections.
I was really thankful to see that the exports came higher.
And we have an all moms roundtable this Mother's Day weekend to break it all down. USDA seeing a major reorg. We'll tell you why it puts even more focus on trade. Is renegotiating NAFTA a bad thing?
I worry that we're going to lose some of the exports that we already have.
We'll tell you why the talks of NAFTA are creating mixed emotions in ag. And in John's world,
soybeans in Saskatchewan. Wait, what?
U.S. Farm Report, brought to you by the dependable, long-lasting Chevy Silverado.
Now for the news that moved the markets this week. USDA providing the first glimpse of its 2017 and 2018 supply and demand projections, painting a bullish picture for both corn and wheat. USDA estimates the 2017 U.S. corn crop could reach 170.7 bushels per acre, which would be the third highest yield on record. Now, based on weather-adjusted trends and assuming normal planting progress and summer weather, that number is off from 2016's record of 174.6 bushels per acre. Now, on 90 million acres, that puts production at just above 14 billion bushels. And for soybeans, USDA pegging yield at 48 bushels per acre. And on a record number of acres, it puts production at 4.2 billion bushels. But a drop in wheat acres could really eat into supplies. USDA pegs yield at 47 bushels to the acre and production at 1.8 billion bushels. Now, according to USDA, the 2017 to 2018 U.S. cotton crop could top 19 million bales. That would be a sharp rise in next season's ending stocks. However, the export forecast is set to increase on higher than expected export sales. USDA also giving its first taste of meat projection estimates this week. The agency expecting beef production to see a 2.3% bump and pork production to rise by 3.3%. But strong demand could offset that growth, as the agency doesn't expect the impressive export pace to slow down. USDA raising its 2017 beef export forecast to 2.8 billion pounds, which would be a 10% jump from last year. Well, the Sterling Profit Tracker showing impressive gains for feed yards last week. According to our partners at Drovers, feed yards profits hit $589 per head. That's a run of $98 in just 1 week, largely elevated in a rally in the cash cattle prices. But today's picture is a complete 180 from the fall of 2015.
We're getting some of that equity back. It's been really good. It kind of started the tail end of 2016 and it's carried over into this year. And things currently are about as good as it gets in the cattle feeding business.
Now, Morehouse also telling us feed yards are pulling cattle up greener since the basis is so enticing. And with lighter carcass weights, that's also helping the price momentum today. Well, beef exports to China could happen no later than July 16th. That's the deadline both China and U.S. agreed on, and the first tangible steps after trade talks between the country's presidents last month. Now, just this week, U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross saying U.S. will expand trade of both beef and chicken to China, as well as increase financial firms. U.S. says it will also issue a proposed rule by mid-July to allow Chinese cooked poultry into the U.S. And speaking of trade, the Senate confirming Robert Lighthizer as U.S. Trade Representative this week. In a vote of 82 to 14, the Senate filling a key spot for the Trump administration in helping the president carry out his trade agenda. All right, those are the headlines. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman joins us now with weather. Mike, I feel like a broken record. Our viewers saw more rain this week.
Thanks, Tyne. Now, obviously, it's going to rain in parts of the lower 48 as we head through this week, but I think a lot of the area is going to see a drier weather pattern overall, especially east of the Mississippi. But we'll talk more about that coming up. We've really shoved the drought areas down into most of the southeast, couple of spots in the southern plains and the southwest. But back a month ago, you can see how there was still some from Oklahoma into parts of northern Georgia, western Carolinas. But over the last month, we've whittled that area down little by little. But the worst areas continue to be southern Georgia and southern Florida right now as far as the drought monitor is concerned. So here's the forecast as we head through day by day this week. This is going to be a couple of low pressure systems coming in from the west. very slow movers with this. Huge dome of high pressure sitting over the southeast, kind of shoving everything west and north of it. So it's going to stay dry, it looks like, this entire week, or most of it anyway, for the southeastern portions of the country. So it looks like as we start the week, showers and thunderstorms, far western plains, eastern Rockies with rain and even some mountain snow into the Pacific Northwest, some lingering showers in the northeast. As we head toward Wednesday, then, that first system trying to come east, these will be scattered showers and thunderstorms. I don't see widespread rain here, but it could be more widespread in the western Great Lakes there, scattered showers over into Maine, rain and a little bit of mountain snow out west. By Friday, then, that first system does finally go scooting through the northern tier of states, through New England. Then that front stalls out. These two systems producing showers and thunderstorms more in the middle of the country by next Friday. We'll be back in our next half hour with a longer range outlook.
All right, thanks, Mike. Well, in honor of Mother's Day weekend, we're hosting an all-moms marketing panel this week. Naomi Bloom and Angie Setzer join me next. Welcome back this Mother's Day weekend. As promised, an all-moms roundtable here this weekend. We have Naomi Bloom as well as Angie Setzer. Let's jump right into this USDA report we saw this week. What was the biggest surprise for you, Naomi?
Well, I was really thankful to see that the exports came higher for soybeans. I think that was long overdue, so that was a nice drawdown for the ending stocks for the old crop contracts. I think that gives the market a little bit of support right now. And then going into it, beyond that, it didn't really surprise me too much. The USDA actually usually uses just trendline yields to start in the May report. So that was a little bit what I was expecting. And of course, going forward from here, it depends on weather. But I was happy again to see the exports go up for the soybeans.
Angie, biggest surprise for you?
For me, the drawdown in global ending stocks for the 17-18 for the new crop year. So I was really kind of surprised by that. The big thing is we keep having this argument or this discussion over how much corn China has, and there has been some talk floating around that they have upwards of 200 million metric ton, which is double what the USDA has been saying at the 101 or so is what they were forecasting for the end of this year. So to see the USDA take out 20 million metric ton or over almost 800 million bushel from their expectations on carryout next year, to me was a sign, hopefully, of things to come, an indication that China is going to start to tap into what they have reserved wise, and also shows me that the USDA is not afraid to maybe get a little bit more honest about what's going on over there, and perhaps shift the idea that we're drowning in global supplies when China has been holding on to nearly half of them over the last couple of years anyway.
Yeah. And Naomi, you mentioned soybean exports. Do you think we can continue on the strong pace that we've been on? I mean, do you think this holds?
I do, actually, I really do. And the thing with soybeans and soybean meal demand, I think that we're going to both continue to see those grow and be supportive and strong going forward. With China, they're already continuing to improve and increase what they're importing for soybeans, for soybean meal. They're not buying DDGs from us anymore, so they need the meal for feed. So you're going to see the soybean meal, the soybean demand get stronger, and with the soybean meal, there's talk again from Argentina that we're going to be putting some hefty tariffs on biodiesel imports. And so what that would mean is that we're not bringing in as much biodiesel. So hey, maybe we're going to finally up our usage here of what we're actually producing as well. So I'm very favorable to exports for soybeans and soybean meal.
But looking at this upcoming year, Angie, and USDA projecting already price and yield, and I know they use kind of the trend line yield, but how much stock can we put into that already? I mean, should we even pay attention to the prices that USDA is throwing at us at all?
The way I look at it is it's a skeleton. So as the year progresses, basically the March intentions and the acreage is what you get is the first established skeleton or the bones. And this report just puts a little bit more flesh on the bones that we have. And just kind of have it be a guide as to what to expect, but don't have it be the only direction because, of course, we have so much growing season to play through yet.
Well, they didn't put much upward trend on corn prices. We are going to could see a pretty big bump on wheat prices according to USDA, and then they're pretty bearish on soybean prices. I mean, does that kind of hold true to your thoughts right now, Naomi?
I think it's just one scenario that could unfold. I'm a little bit leaning more to the friendly side of things because of the soybean demand that we have. And with all the agronomy meetings that I went to this winter, the longer you're getting your plant into the crop into the ground, you're just not able to achieve those above trendline yields. So I think we are appropriate at trendline. And we'll see from here. It's probably going to get a little bit smaller, just depending on how the season goes.
And speaking of this season, looking at the wheat crop, I mean, it seems like when these USDA officials, when they were assessing the crop, it was before that late spring snowstorm hit. And so we really don't know the extent of that damage yet. And this report did not indicate the extent of that damage, correct?
No, you saw the winter wheat harvested percentage was about 84%, 83.7 give or take. That's a little bit lower than where we've seen the last couple of years. And there's been a discussion in the market structure right now as to whether or not that abandonment number is too high. I personally don't think it is. It was just 2 years ago, or in the 13-14 crop, that we were down to 80% harvested. Now the market thinks or gets a little bit concerned about further abandonment just because the planted acres are down so much. But I do know that the USDA, I asked specifically how they came up with their harvested acreage numbers, and they said it was based off a survey that they put out April 25th through May 4th or 5th. So it really wasn't done a week or so after, which is the true time that people are going to make the decision on whether or not to walk away from that Kansas crop that was damaged by snow.
So we'll talk about weather and planting and even get into this meat demand. We'll do that when we come back on U.S. Farm Report. All right, welcome back. Well, now that we have this May report behind us, it seems like the trade is kind of focusing on weather now. And I've heard a lot of frustrations from viewers. I mentioned it last week. They're frustrated because they're saying, hey, my crop's underwater, yet this market is not responding. Why is the trade not responding to the soaking wet weather we've been experiencing this past month?
Yeah, I think it looks back at history to see that even in years where we were only half planted like we are this year, give it another 4 weeks, the crop is going to get planted. Yes, there's going to be some that needs to be replanted along the way, and yes, those drowned out acres are going to be accounted for, but right now the market is only concerned that the crop is going to get in the ground and get planted, and it's going to assume the best until proven otherwise, and history tells us that we get the crop in the ground.
Yeah, I mean, you're in Iowa. Planting's progressing pretty nicely where you are.
In northern Iowa, yeah. We came across into South Bend, and I was really surprised once you got south of 20 and along I-80, the lack of progress. But I agree with what Naomi had to say. I mean, I think the market structure, for one, the most recent wet weather event that we had was in 2015. That year we produced a brand new record crop. But that was a very different year, and in my travels back and forth between Iowa and Michigan, I can tell you it was a very different year because that year we had the crop in the ground early and had decent emergence. And so a lot of times the trade thinks with wet weather, for every acre that you're damaging, there's 2 that are benefiting from the moisture. You cannot say the same thing when A, the seed has not even been able to emerge because of cold temperatures, or B, has not even been planted.
So you do not think that the lack of planting progress is priced in right now?
The planting progress itself, the crop will get planted. The question that I have is, what about the last 5 to 10%? The 90% of the crop will be planted, I think, by 2 weeks from now, which I've had a lot of people say that I'm crazy for thinking that. But you have to think about the fact that 5 to 10%, of 90 million acres is a reasonably large number that we would have to be concerned about by the end of the month. And then you start to look at, are we going to see prevented plantings taken? Are we going to see a switch? What's going to happen at that point?
Well, we haven't seen a lot of volatility in the corn market, but we cannot say the same for this cattle market. My goodness, I was just in Texas this week, talked to a feed yard. Last time I was there in the fall of 2015, they were losing $500 a head. This time, they're making that per head. I mean, we've just seen this volatile market. But do you think these cattle prices are too good at this point?
I think that where they got to, they had every right and reason to be there because the demand has just been so fantastic domestically and our export market is so strong. The packers were caught short, and so that's where that recent run-up in prices came from. However, now that we get into this time frame of the month of June, as we're heading into it, I think the Memorial Weekend demand has been met. All of the retail end users have put their orders in place, and that's what led up to that big price rally higher. And going forward, I think we see the market have a nice correction lower. The June contract maybe get down to 120 after coming off the 134 high. But then I think we go into more of a sideways trading range because we still have demand for all summer long. And with cheap gas prices, I think the demand is just really fantastic.
I agree. The cash values that you're seeing still paid have not really gone. Cash tends to lead a little bit in cattle, which I like a little bit more because it's more specific. You get the specific areas and specific prices. There's not the wide range that you see in grain. So the strength in cash to me tells me that the market will find support and like Naomi said, we'll trade sideways probably. Once we establish, we've got to find where our support levels are at, run out of sellers basically in the market itself, see the buyers reemerge, and we'll probably find that range, and we'll be able to hopefully, if you're a cattleman, sell the higher end and be able to wait out the low end.
Looking at dairy prices and dairy exports, I mean, there's just been a lot of news around dairy, especially with the grassland situation and with Canada and trade talks. But exports, we just haven't seen that impressive momentum that we've seen on the cattle side of things. So do you think that changes and helps dairy prices, or kind of what's your outlook at this point?
Outlook for dairy markets actually is a little bit more of a sideways trading pattern, where front month contracts stay between $16 and $16.50. Deferred contracts go from $16.50 to $17. What's been really fantastic for the dairy market right now is cheese demand, and cash cheese this week and last week was on fire. And it's interesting to watch the cash market move when it's trading, because it's an aggressive little flurry of buying that can happen. And that's what's been supporting the market right now. But we still are in a situation where supplies are very, very ample. So thankfully we have that demand right now.
All right, well, we need to get their closing thoughts. We'll take a short break, and then we'll come back on U.S. Farm Report. All right, welcome back. Time now for closing thoughts. Naomi, we'll start with you.
I want to go back to the corn market, and specifically to producers who have corn in the bin that they are needing to get rid of over the next few months. There's a lot of people in that same situation, so I would say get your orders in ahead of time to make sure that your selling targets are met as the market price rallies. I really am favorable to higher futures markets for corn. I really am thinking 70% odds of the market getting up to the 440, 450 December futures area on a summer scare. We don't have any reason to get beyond that right now. It would have to be a substantial weather issue, but on the market, that's going to allow everyone to get some cash sales done, so get those orders in place ahead of time.
Yeah, good reminder. Thanks, Naomi. Angie?
Just basically a lot of what Naomi had to say, except for the main thing that I want to add is that it's easy to get frustrated right now. And a lot of times when I work with my customers, I will see that frustration turn into just shutting down and basically leaving the plan or throwing the plan to the wayside. The market is going to give you an opportunity to market or to capture a rally in corn and in wheat. Make sure you have those plans in place. If you are in an area with a lot of old crop corn around, start talking to your buyers about getting some basis locked in, and then go from there.
All right, thank you both, and happy Mother's Day. It's Angie's
too.
first Mother's Day.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
I like it. Being a mom's kind of cool. It's
is
the
kinda
hardest,
cool.
the hardest, best job I've ever done.
That's so true.
Definitely.
And I tell everyone that. Yeah, it is the most challenging, but the most rewarding.
Yes.
All right, thank you both.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it, ladies. Stay with us. John Phipps joins us next.
U.S. Farm Report, America's longest-lasting news program for farmers, is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.
Well, just when you think some crops can't move any farther north, John brings us to reality in this week's John's World.
Recently, I was on Twitter, I've had plenty of time for that, and saw a tweet from a Canadian farmer, David Kuchar, I hope that's correct, about a new crop soybean bid in west central Saskatchewan. And as he noted, that's pretty far north for that crop, above the 51st latitude. Now, for those of you a little rusty on Canadian geography, which is pretty much every American, here's where the elevator is located. Kindersley, Saskatchewan. It's 170 miles north of the U.S.-Canadian border. While my generation watched as Brazil and Argentina built soy production powerhouses, my son will likely watch one arise on the Great Prairies of Canada. While some of the credit for this farming change goes to better soy genetics, the big reason is shown right here. Canada has been adding growing season days at about 2 days per decade since 1960. Along with those additional growing degree units came an increase of over 20% in precipitation. Manitoba has led the western provinces in soybean planting, single-handedly boosting Canadian acres to over 7 million this year. And all indications are this is just the beginning. Compared to small grains, especially soybeans, are simply more profitable to grow. Meanwhile, processors and transportation are beginning to emerge to capitalize on this new crop and the seemingly unlimited demand from China. It also helps that Canada has outstanding port facilities on their Pacific coast. Of course, this is still less than a tenth of U.S. acreage, but to me it suggests that the new demand that we all see in our future for soy won't be met by America alone. While American growers have adjusted with discomfort to the growing clout of South American producers in the global market, competition from our neighbors to the north is a startling idea that will probably be underestimated for a few years yet to come. Luckily, those of us old enough to remember when the Canadian growing season severely limited what crops could be grown there won't be around to perpetuate this blind spot. My guess is that my son and his colleagues will watch reports of the Canadian corn and soy crops with intense interest.
Thanks, John. Well, still to come, while some of our viewers are enjoying watching the corn pop up in rows, others are still stuck watching it rain. But we still have some planting progress to share with you later in the show.
From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. We have much more ahead. Mixed emotions on renegotiating trade deals. That's our Farm Journal report. USDA announcing a major reorg this week with the focus on trade. In customer support, the sweet corn debate continues, but now John has answers. Now for the headlines. Trade now has another seat at the table when it comes to renegotiations and new trade deals. That's as Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue announcing a major revamp of USDA this week.
I want someone who wakes up every morning and asks the question, where can I sell more U.S. products today?
As directed in the last Farm Bill, Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue says they are creating a new undersecretary position for trade. Also with this reorg, the FSA, RMA, and the NRCS will now be under the same umbrella called Farm Production and Conservation Mission Area.
So in a nutshell, we're essentially doing three major things. We've created a new mission area for international trade under a new undersecretary. Secondly, we've reconstituted our domestic-facing agencies under a newly named undersecretary. And thirdly, we've elevated the rural development to answer directly to the Secretary of Agriculture.
Informa Economics' Jim Wiesmeyer says the reorg is a creative one with no reduction in staff. Meanwhile, the Senate Ag Committee hit the road last week with its second Farm Bill hearing.
We must embrace the attitude of our producers, optimism and ingenuity.
Senate Ag Chair Pat Roberts says, but with budget restraints, the Farm Bill will need to do more with less, and that now is the time to ask the tough questions to determine the effectiveness of current programs. Roberts was joined by Ranking Democrat Debbie Stabenow of Michigan, leading discussions among a panel of producers and ag officials who talked about concerns with certain farm programs as well as finding enough workers.
Labor continues to be our #1 issue on our farm, and I must say, there is no insurance for no labor. A solution to this problem must come sooner than later. I've personally witnessed crops wasting away on trees because the producer wasn't able to secure a domestic workforce.
A couple producers on the panel also mentioned crop insurance, saying it works, but with any new program, it could use some improvements. Well, the president ordering the review of recent national monument designations following the previous administration's use of the Antiquities Act to lock up more than 250 million acres. U.S. Interior Secretary Ryan Zink following through on that order this week. Touring America's newest and most hotly contested monuments, including Bears Ears National Monument. The 1.3 million acre designation is just one of nearly 30 now under review.
A lot of that is restoring trust. And restoring trust is about listening, is about working with local communities, and making sure that our public lands are for the public.
The Public Lands Council and the National Cattlemen's Beef Association both applauding the action. They say elevating millions of acres to monument status without local input or economic analysis results in unrecoverable losses to the local communities. And they also cited recent examples of losses in grazing and logging rights as lands transition to monument status. Well, Midwest farmland values did find some footing. According to the Chicago Fed, farmland values stayed flat during the first quarter of the year. The only states where ag property values saw a boost were Wisconsin and Iowa. Illinois land values, they remained flat. And ag bankers also pointing out cash rents declined, falling 7% from early 2016. Meanwhile, lending conditions continue to erode in the western half of the Corn Belt. The Kansas City Fed says farm income and loan repayments shifted lower. The Fed says the western portion of their district saw more pressure than the east, but farmland values in the area also feeling pressure, with cropland falling 3%. But it's the western half really feeling the pinch, with cropland values in that area falling 24% in just 2 years. The ag acquisition shakeup continues this week, with Bayer announcing it will sell its Liberty and Liberty Link branded seeds business to gain antitrust approval for its acquisition of Monsanto. Reuters reporting the divestment of the two global brands will account for the bulk of asset sales, which is needed to satisfy regulators looking at the $66 billion deal. Bayer's CEO last month said he still expects the acquisition to be final by the end of the year. The late spring snowstorm that dumped as much as 21 inches of snow across Kansas covered 40% of the state's wheat crop. Kansas State Extension says it will be a while before they know the full extent of the damage, but even areas that received light snow still saw below freezing temperatures coupled with high winds for consecutive nights. That's a lethal combination for wheat in that stage. But that snow did hit as far south as Texas. David Clevenger farms just outside of Amarillo and says the snow did push the wheat over, but it's recovered since then.
I think we've got an average wheat crop. I think in the eastern panhandle, they said they maybe have some 40, 50 bushel dryland yields, and it looks pretty good. They've had good rains over in the eastern part of the panhandle. Over here, we've had adequate moisture, but didn't seem like we got the stand that in the fall that we've had in the past, so we didn't have a lot of tillering. And so that's hurt the production.
Well, the latest USDA drought monitor showing improvements across the southeast and east, but the dryness is spreading across central and eastern Texas, as well as North Dakota and South Dakota. The monitor showing the abnormally dry area of the southeast, or that portion in yellow, seeing a 7-point improvement this week. But extreme drought, or that area in red, did spread to nearly 3% of 2 states. Now, the high plains also seeing dryness spread mainly across the Dakotas. The area considered abnormally dry doubled in just a week. All right, that's it for the news. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman joins us now with a longer range look at weather. Mike, how's the rest of May panning out?
Thanks, Tyne. Overall, I think it becomes a little less of a volatile weather pattern because it's been volatile lately. When you have a cutoff low over the northeast like we have right now and a cutoff low over the west, that's very strange weather pattern for this time of the year. Big ridge through the middle of the country. You can see as we head through this week then, that ridge gets shoved into the Great Lakes where it really warms up big time, rather stormy in sections out west. As we head through the end of the week then, the ridge holds for the most part over the southeast through Friday. And then on into the weekend, looks like the ridge gets shoved into the eastern lakes and the eastern seaboard with that trough over the northern plain states. So, 30-day outlook for temperatures. I'm going below normal from Iowa, Illinois through Maine, above normal for Florida, and also above normal northern Montana northward. The rest of the area, I'm going pretty close to normal for temperatures. 30-day outlook for precipitation, above normal up and down the spine of the Rockies, and also from Arkansas to the mid-Atlantic, below normal Florida, South Texas, and also the western lakes, northeastern plains. Tyne?
Thanks, Mike. Well, trade continues to be a major focus for the new administration, and that will be a challenging task as the White House targets NAFTA and two of agriculture's biggest customers for fresh negotiations. So what will renegotiations mean, and is everyone in favor? Michelle Rook traveled to D.C. to find out for this week's Farm Journal report.
President Trump has decided he'll renegotiate rather than withdraw from NAFTA, much to the relief of farm groups. But what would make it a better deal for agriculture? For many sectors of agriculture, they don't believe they can renegotiate a better trade agreement.
We got everything we want out of NAFTA, so we just want to maintain our zero tariffs on pork trade in North America.
When it comes to cattle and beef, we want to be left alone. It works well, and because of NAFTA, we have two $1 billion markets, both to the north and south.
But NAFTA really opened the door for wheat in Mexico. They had a lot of restrictions before. They dropped their tariff gradually to zero. It's become our #1 market.
Mexico is also the #1 market for corn, although for the feed grain industry, there are a few tweaks that could be made.
Sanitary, barriers. Again, the barriers for entry for things like weed seed, things like that, protocols. Those are really important. And of course, sound foundation for biotechnology.
There's also a fear that by trying to fix the trade deficit for other products, agriculture will lose ground.
Unfortunately, the way he's going about it, I worry that we're going to lose some of the exports that we already have in agriculture, both to Canada and to Mexico.
However, the one commodity that might benefit the most from renegotiating NAFTA is dairy, due to Canada's new pricing strategy.
To not only cut off exports from the U.S., what little exports we have, but also more importantly, they want to dump their skim milk proteins in export markets around the world where it will compete with U.S. exports.
We completely gave up any power over the Canadians whatsoever in NAFTA. We gave them complete autonomy of their supply management system in dairy and poultry.
Ray Starling, Ag Liaison to the White House, agrees policy on dairy, poultry, and fruits and vegetables could be improved, in addition to...
It's not just in the numbers of what we sell or what comes in. Some of it comes down to how quickly do we resolve disputes when we have a dispute.
However, he says they realize NAFTA has been good for agriculture, and that will shape their negotiations.
Keeping what we have, particularly as it relates to agriculture, and then improving upon it.
In Washington, D.C., I'm Michelle Rourke reporting for U.S. Farm Report.
Thanks, Michelle. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, the Senate did confirm U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer this week. Well, when we come back, John Phipps.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Kubota. Learn more about Kubota SSV Series skid steers at Kubota.com.
Your call is very important to us. Please hold.
Welcome back. Well, apparently viewers were hungry for more sweet corn talk. Here's John Phipps.
As I had hoped last week, another viewer was able to shed some light on the reason why bicolor sweet corn dominates at retail outlets. We share the same frustration in only finding bicolor corn. I have pressed this subject deeper with growers and was surprised as to their reason for not growing all yellow corn. If they are selling into a farmer's market or an urban market, consumers will not buy the all yellow because they do not know how to tell sweet corn from field corn. So they demand bicolor as insurance of getting sweet corn. I do not know if this suggests that they have been burned with field corn or not. And that's from Greg Marley. Thanks, Greg. This makes sense to me. I've had friends involved in farmers markets in different places who confessed there were occasional problems with exactly where the produce came from. Given the higher prices charged at such local food outlets, the temptation to pass off field corn as sweet corn could occur. But that said, there could be another factor, which I find more likely. Super sweet varieties contain 4 to 10 times the sugar in regular sweet corn, which itself has considerably more sugar than field corn grown for feed or ethanol. Consumers who have been eating super sweet, which has been on the market for years, might bite into normal sweet corn and mistake it for field corn. The sugar difference is that detectable. There is a growing concern in nutrition science that our obsession with fats has overshadowed the powerful influence of sugars, especially added sugars. And in a way, super sweet corn has added sugars. And it's reset our expectation of what sweet corn is supposed to taste like. It's hard to fault consumers who want to ensure they get the product they are expecting. And choosing bicolor seems a logical way to do it. Finally, I'd say this. Growing sweet corn is not exactly a rocket surgery. The inability to find the kind you like could be just the reason to plant your own crop.
Thanks, John. And remember, if you have a question or a comment for John, just email or send him a note on Facebook or Twitter. When we come back, we head out west to visit Baxter Black.
Help a community organization win $10,000. Vote now by texting DREAM to 31313.
Welcome back. It's time now for a little humor this weekend with Baxter Black.
Sometimes when we go to our livestock meetings and see all the technology, we forget about the cowboy and the horse. I'll remind you practitioners of modern agriculture, there are still places where a cowboy and a horse are an essential part of the management, where it's more expedient to treat the critter where you find it rather than try and drive it or haul it to a squeeze chute or a trap 2 miles away. If you have the luxury of a 2-man crew, you can head and heel them right there. But for the lone rider, his skills got to be at a higher level. The critter's got to be caught, restrained, treated, and then released. Now in real life, catching an animal means roping the head, the horns, the heels, one hock, or any combination. Now restraining usually means putting the beast on the ground. No matter what appendage you have roped, you can drag him till he slowly keels over. Patience is required, not a lot of hoorah. And when he falls, you keep your rope tight while you take a couple dallies and a half hitch, commonly called a hooey, around the saddle horn. This'll hold as long as the rope stays tight to the critter. You get off and you follow your rope down and wrap a loop of the loose rein around the rope to keep the horse's head pointed at the calf. Put your weight on the down critter and put your slip knot of your piggin string on the down front foot. Push both hind legs together forward and arrange them on top of the looped front leg, and you might include a fourth leg besides. Take 3 wraps around them, pull them together tight, and I mean real tight. And then 1 or maybe 2 wraps in a hooey, and he's ready to be treated. Now you can loosen or let go your catch rope. Now this description of our skilled cowboy making the perfect catch and tie down holds true. Unless, of course, your horse lets the slack out of the line when he shouldn't, or gets tangled in the coils, which he also shouldn't, or the dally slips, or you loop the piggin string over your own wrist, or the critter gets loose and runs under your horse's belly, who then deserts you 3 miles from the pickup and loses your rope somewhere along the way. But don't worry, that never happens. This is Baxter Black and the Cowboys from out there.
Thanks, Baxter. And you can hear more from him online at baxterblack.com. When we come back, a workhorse tractor that's been in the family since 1945.
Visit farmjournalpro.com. Trusted analysis, professional insight. farmjournalpro.com.
Time now for Tractor Tales with Machinery Pete, the most trusted name in farm equipment.
Welcome back to Tractor Tales, folks. This week we're off to Illinois to check out a family-owned Farmall H. Bought in 1945, this workhorse farmed for this family for over 60 years. And if you ask Eugene, he'll tell you this tractor is staying with the family.
It was bought in 1945 by my dad when he was farming on this particular farm here. It was used as one of the main tractors for the operation of the farm. I had 3 brothers. There was 4 of us boys, and we kind of took turns driving it. And finally, Dad rented more land, and he bought a couple of more little H's. And before it was all over, we all had a little H. But there's only one of them that survived the crew, and that's this one here. It's been in the family since it was brand new. Still used all the time, especially at harvest time. It runs the augers and just minor light duty work. I think it's been overhauled once. As long as she runs, why, away we go. It's always been inside. We are pretty particular about keeping our machinery inside. Spend more money for buildings to store machinery than what we should, but it pays off in the long run. I suppose they had, in those days, they only put new rings and ground the valves and put some new bearings across the bottom of it, I suppose, but basically that's probably about it. Nothing completely major, but just a typical in-frame overhaul. It had a paint job probably 20 years ago, probably with a brush. The plan for this tractor is it's never going to leave. There's no way you have enough money to buy it, and I'm sure I'm not the first guy that said that. As long as it's been here that 60 years, why, must be something good about it.
Today's Country Church Salute goes to the St. John Lutheran Church located in Hamburg, Wisconsin. Their church community is celebrating 150 years this year. The congregation started in 1867 and also served as a school in its early years. But a fun fact, Their organist has been playing for 65 years at their church. Our thanks to Linda Wiederhaft for sharing their story. And if you have a home church that you would like to submit, you can do that to the address on the screen. Stay with us. We have some From the Farm photos next.
This is Machinery Pete, inviting you to check out my new website, machinerypete.com. Offering farmers tens of thousands of used equipment listings to search, let Machinery Pete help you find and value your next piece of used equipment.
Welcome back. Well, Mike, even though some of our viewers saw more rain this week, some actually got to plant. Darren was busy planting sunflowers in eastern North Dakota this week.
And that was one of the places that didn't get much rain. Jimmy Webb says he's watching peanuts grow in Twin Rows in Georgia. He says the stands look excellent this year so far.
And Walt Smith had some special visitors. Check out his sons delivering supper this week. They drove that mini gator a half a mile to deliver food to the field. I mean, that is dedication.
No doubt about it. I remember getting that when baling hay. It was always nice to get the lunch pail coming in. And check out this calf whisperer. Maddie's mom says she's determined to get the calves to like her.
Oh, that's adorable. Well, if you have any pictures or videos, you can send that to us at mailbag@usfarmreport.com. For all of us at US Farm Report, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to join us again right here next week as we work to build on our tradition. And for all you moms out there, happy Mother's Day and have a great weekend, everyone.
US Farm Report, America's longest lasting news program for farmers, is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest lasting pickups. US Farm Report is produced and distributed by Farm Journal Broadcast.